Hi there, I'm Jim Brayshaw. I've authored a 4-volume Imagine No Satan book series. The first volume of that is Satan, Christianity's Other God. And in that very title, there's been some controversy in people's minds saying, could this person, this writer, this theme be considering that there's a second God if we believe in a supernatural Satan? Well, we're going to take 4 minutes and 45 seconds of your valuable time to take a look at this quickly and see. Let me just ask you this. If I had this particular unusually angry looking wooden mask made in Africa, and I came into my studio, I don't bring a lot of props into the studio, but I happen to bring this one in, and all of a sudden, let's say stuff started falling off the walls. Or let's say all of a sudden lightning struck when I had this in my hands. Or let's say I tripped and fell and I injured myself severely in my studio, and this mask was here. This wooden carving, often thought to be a carving of maybe an ancient evil entity, or often thought to be the carving of a god that once existed or maybe still does exist and has some potential or power to disrupt the flow of human activities, either in the physical realm, the spiritual realm, the emotional realm. And this now becomes not just a mask, not just a wooden mask that has zero power, but it now becomes something with power. I can now imbue it by my thoughts with the power to change my world. It has an effect on me. Can it cause sickness? Can it change the weather? Can it cause the lights to flicker? I've now given it supernatural entities. This is a similar thing that we have done with the Satan of religion. We've turned that Satan into a god by ascribing to it powers that belong to the supposed one God of the universe. It's a really interesting history because when the Hebrew people went to Babylon, which was overtaken by Persia in the 6th century BC, they began to assimilate. The Hebrew people began to adopt the ideas of the Persians. There was an ancient philosopher slash spiritual leader named Zoroaster, and he began to articulate to the masses that there's not only a good God, but there's an evil entity, and I had a vision of this evil entity, and it brings evil on humans and on the world all the time. Let's not blame the good God for evil. Let's blame this evil God that Zoroaster, in Zoroastrianism, had an idea existed. And it's pretty interesting when we start to follow the Persians who took over from the Babylonians and their ecumenical form of religion. They really believed it was okay to practice any religion you wanted, but they really had a strong belief that there was more than one God in existence, but there was two, a second evil entity. Now, the Hebrew people were there in Persia. They were there because they were sent into exile, and they were there for many, many generations. But when they were there, they began to assimilate, to adapt to the Persian culture and adopt the Persian philosophical and spiritual ideas. Therein lies the issue. This is when the Hebrew people were so closely tied to a secondary evil entity, godlike being, as being part of the universe, that they began to build and construct theories and concepts and teachings around it. Now, we know this. There is supposed to be, according to Scripture, only one God. I need to go over a couple passages with you so that we can identify what this God of the universe says about himself or itself or herself. Call it what you like. That's not the dispute. We're not disputing if this God exists. We want to question, does the Bible say there's no other God, which means there's no other Satan? Which means Satan isn't real and doesn't exist, because that would make Satan a second God. Here we have in Exodus 9, "For I will at this time send all my plagues upon your heart and upon your servants and upon your people, that they might know that there is none like me in all the earth." Okay, right there's a God saying, I'm the one that sends everything evil, all the plagues, so that you guys know there's no other entity that can do that. Here he says again in Deuteronomy 4:28, "And there you shall serve other gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which cannot see, hear, or eat, or smell." So there, the one God of the universe who says there's no other gods is saying, you're going to go and serve other gods that don't exist. They can't eat, smell, or hear. Here he goes on in verse 33 of section 4, chapter 4, by finishing and saying, "Or has God gone forth to take himself a nation from the midst of a nation by trials, signs, and wonders, and war, and by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all Jehovah your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? To you it was revealed that you might know that Jehovah is God, and no one else is beside him." And in Deuteronomy 4 again, he says, "Know today and turn back your heart to it. Jehovah is God. in the heavens and above earth, there is no other. So no other God exists. We found when the Hebrew people were in their exile, Isaiah was also recognizing assimilation occurred. And we find in the passage of Isaiah 45, that God says through the prophet Isaiah, he says, remember the former things of old, he says, for I am God, there is none else. There is none like me. God says this all over the place. And then God goes on to say, I make peace and I create evil. I, Yahweh, do all these things. The theme was always don't blame what the Creator God does on some made up man-created evil entity that's supposedly like God. Because what are the things that God can do and what are the things Satan can do? If God says there's none like him in all the earth, yet there's another entity in this universe that can do things like God, then God becomes a liar. And we can't have that as the reality of this ancient faith that believes there's a one God. The true monotheism says there's no other gods, which includes no supernatural Satan. Here's some of the things God can do, but also things that are said Satan can do. God can do miracles and give thoughts to people. So can Satan supposedly give miracles and implant evil thoughts in people. God can appear in various forms. So can Satan appear in various forms, such as a serpent. God can fill a person's spirit. God can kill. God can control the weather and place diseases on man. All these things have also been said about Satan. God can remove diseases from man and dispatch angels. Well, Satan's been said to remove disease from man as well at times and dispatch demons. God can test man and hear our prayers and raise up leaders. We know this right now. There's many leaders in the world who have been said to be put into power by Satan. We know that God has tests for man, and we know Satan is supposed to have tested man. And we know God can bring evil. We found that in Amos 3 verse 6 in one of my other videos, that has their evil not come upon this city, and I, God, has done it. And we know that God can move between two worlds, and we are also told Satan can move between two worlds. Let me tell you this. There is only one God identified in the Bible. If there's a supernatural entity known as Satan that can do all these things that Satan supposedly can do, then folks, we're believing in two gods. I was a believer in two gods at one time until I learned that there is no supernatural Satan. And I hope you can either email me, check out my website, imaginalsatan.com, or pick up one of the volumes in the Imagine No Satan series so that you too can learn how liberating it is when we remove that false idea that Satan is real, which thus makes him a god and in competition with the one God of the universe. Thanks for your time. I'm Jim Brayshaw. I can't help but go over time on this stuff. I'm so sorry, but you guys are awesome to stick with this, and please get in touch when you have some time. J.R. Brayshaw at shaw.ca or imaginenosatan.com. Take good care.